The most terrifying sound in the world isn't a scream. It isn't the roar of a fire or the screech of tires on wet pavement. It's the sound of a 7-year-old boy learning how to make himself invisible. It's the silence of a child who has been told, in no uncertain terms, that his existence is a clerical error in the ledger of a family that values porcelain over people. I sat in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles looked like polished bone, and I realized that my parents hadn't just neglected my son, they had attempted to erase him. Have you ever looked at the people who raised you and realized they weren't your protectors, but the very monsters you'd been taught to hide from under the covers? My relationship with my parents, Arthur and Eleanor, was never a warm blanket. It was more like a series of sharp, jagged rocks that I had learned to navigate with bloody feet. For 30 years, I played their game. I convinced myself that their coldness was just a different kind of love, a disciplined old-school stoicism. They never laid a hand on me, sure, but they used silence like a surgical instrument, cutting away my self-worth until there was nothing left but a craving for their approval. I was the child who was tolerated. My sister, Melissa, was the child who was celebrated. It was a hierarchy established in the nursery and reinforced at every Thanksgiving dinner. When I had Caleb, I made a silent vow. I would be the shield. I would be the warmth. I saw the way my mother's eyes would track his movements when he played with his blocks, as if his messy, joyful energy was a stain on her perfectly curated living room. I saw how my father would give out his affection in microscopic rations only when Caleb performed some feat of obedience that met his impossible standards. So, I kept them at a distance. I built a wall of polite boundaries that I thought was impenetrable, but then, the universe decided to test the structural integrity of my life. It started with a smell. Not smoke, exactly, but the ozone-heavy scent of dying wires inside the walls of my apartment. Within an hour, the fire department was tearing through the drywall, and by midnight, my home was a crime scene of charred insulation and water damage. The landlord was apologetic but helpless. Insurance promised a hotel, but every room in the city was booked for a massive tech convention. I was standing on a sidewalk at 2:04 a.m., my son's hand in mine, everything we owned smelling like a burnt match. The next morning the phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was like a chime, clear, beautiful, and entirely devoid of heat. "Bring Caleb here," she said. "We have the guest wing. It's the sensible thing to do." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew the price of their sensibility. It usually cost a piece of your soul. "It's only for a few days, Mom. I don't want to impose." "Don't be dramatic," she replied, and I could practically hear her adjusting her pearls. "We'll treat him like our own." My father's voice rumbled in the background, a low vibration of reluctant duty. "Just until you're back on your feet. No sense in wasting money on a rental. I should have known then. I should have seen the open loop of their malice. But I was exhausted, and Caleb was tired of sleeping on a friend's couch. I packed his little suitcase with his favorite books, his peanut butter, and the specific bread he liked for his banana sandwiches. I printed out his food allergies in bold, red ink. I kissed his forehead, promising I'd be back for him in 72 hours while I sorted out the new lease. As I drove away, I felt a physical wrenching in my chest. Have you ever left a piece of your heart in a place you knew was haunted? The first 2 days were filled with fine reports. My mother said he was quiet. My father said he was learning the rules. But by the third day, when I called to check in, the tone of Caleb's voice shifted. It wasn't the voice of a 7-year-old. It was the voice of a prisoner who had accepted his sentence. It was thin, brittle, and small. "What did you have for lunch, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. There was a long, suffocating pause. I could hear his breath shaky and shallow. "Some crackers," he whispered. "Just crackers? Where are the sandwiches I packed? Where's the fruit?" Another silence. This one felt like a physical weight. Papa said lunch is for family, and I'm just visiting." The phone didn't just fall, it felt like it evaporated from my hand. The world tilted. In that moment, the polite distance I had maintained for years didn't just crumble, it exploded. I didn't call back. I didn't send a text. I grabbed my keys and drove. I drove through the night, the highway lines blurring into a single white streak of fury. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a predator returning to the nest to find out who had been poking at my cub. I arrived at their pristine colonial home just as the sun was beginning to bleed over the horizon. The house looked perfect. The lawn was a manicured green carpet. The rose bushes were trimmed with military precision. It was a monument to the image my parents worshipped. I didn't knock. I used my old key, the one they forgot I still had, and I walked into the kitchen. The smell hit me first. It was the smell of a real family breakfast. Sizzling bacon, the sweet scent of maple syrup, the rich aroma of expensive coffee. My father was sitting at the head of the table, a towering stack of pancakes in front of him. My mother was elegantly draped over a chair, sipping from a china cup, browsing a magazine as if she hadn't a care in the world. And then I saw Caleb. He was sitting at the very edge of the long wooden table, as far away from them as possible. His plate was empty, not finished, empty. Never touched, empty. He looked pale, his eyes rimmed with a redness that told me he'd been crying in secret. He looked like he was trying to shrink into the wood of the chair, trying to become part of the furniture so he wouldn't be noticed. "Where is his food?" I didn't scream. My voice was a low, vibrating hum of pure ice. My mother didn't even look up from her magazine. "He already ate, dear. Don't be so high-strung." "No, I didn't," Caleb whispered. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor. My father snorted, his fork cutting through a thick layer of butter. "He had some crackers yesterday. He's not starving. He needs to learn that things in this house are earned, not just handed out because you're breathing." I felt the air leave the room. "Earned? He's 7 years old. He's your grandson." My mother finally looked at me, her expression one of mild annoyance. "Oh, stop it. He's your kid. We didn't sign up to be a daycare. Melissa's children are here every week and they know the protocol. They are part of the legacy. This one, he's just a visitor. We're doing you a favor, and you come in here making a scene." There it was. The truth, stripped of its Sunday best clothing. Melissa's kids had bedrooms in this house. They had trust funds and portraits. My son was a guest who had overstayed his welcome by existing. They were using food, the most basic human right, as a tool for psychological dominance. They were starving a child to prove a point about their own superiority. I didn't argue. I didn't throw the pancakes. I walked over to Caleb, picked him up. He felt so light, so fragile, and I whispered, "We're leaving." "You're seriously making a scene over snacks?" My mother called out as I walked toward the door. "You're so sensitive. No wonder you can't keep a house together." I didn't turn around. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out of that house, and as the door clicked shut behind me, I felt a strange, cold clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do. Loneliness makes dangerous choices feel reasonable, but betrayal makes a mother's vengeance feel like a holy mission. I took Caleb to a 24-hour diner. I ordered him everything: pancakes, eggs, fruit, hot chocolate. He took 2 bites of the pancakes and then stopped. His little hands were shaking. "My tummy hurts," he said. "I think I forgot how to be hungry." That sentence broke something inside me that can never be mended. It was the moment I realized that their abuse hadn't just been physical deprivation, it was an assault on his sense of belonging. When we got back to our temporary apartment, Caleb went to his room and stayed there. He wouldn't talk about it. Every time I tried to bring it up, he would just shake his head and stare at his feet. He was processing the fact that the people who were supposed to be, Grandma and Grandpa, looked at him as an intruder. And how do you explain to a child that some people are so hollow they can only feel full by making others empty? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. I wasn't making a grocery list. I was mapping out a demolition. My parents' entire lives were built on the foundation of reputation. They lived for the whispered praises of the neighborhood, the nods of approval at the country club, the image of being the perfect pillar of the community. They thought they had power because they had money and a big house, but they forgot that I was the one who held the keys to their most precious resource, their secrets. I didn't go on social media and rant. That's what sensitive people do. No, I was going to be surgical. I started with my Aunt Leah. She was the family historian, the woman who lived for gossip but masked it as concern. I called her. "Leah," I said, my voice sounding weary and broken. "I just wanted to apologize if Caleb was a burden to Mom and Dad. I didn't realize they felt he wasn't family enough to be fed." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "What do you mean, honey?" "Oh, nothing. It's just..." They told him lunch was only for real family. He didn't eat for 2 days. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding of their values. I let that seed sit in the dark, fertile soil of Leah's mind. Next, I called my cousin Mark. He was the golden boy of the extended family, someone my father respected. I told him the same story, but with a different twist. I'm worried about Dad's memory, Mark. He seemed to forget that Caleb is his grandson. He was treating him like a trespasser. He even compared him to Melissa's kids, saying they were the only ones who earned their place at the table. It was so confusing. By the end of the week, I had spoken to 5 key people. I didn't embellish. I didn't lie. I just told the plain, unvarnished truth about a 7-year-old and a box of crackers. I was starving them, not of food, but of the one thing they gorged on every single day, the illusion of their own goodness. 3 days later, the phone call started. My mother's voice was no longer a chime, it was a screech. "What have you told Leah?" She cancelled our luncheon. She said she didn't feel comfortable eating with people who don't understand the concept of hospitality. "I only told the truth, Mom," I said calmly. "Is the truth a problem?" Then came my father's voicemail. "You're ruining our name over some crackers. You're a vindictive, small-minded woman. If you don't call everyone back and tell them you were exaggerating, don't ever expect to see a dime of your inheritance." I saved that voicemail. I played it twice, then I deleted it. I didn't need their money. I needed them to feel the cold. I needed them to understand what it's like to sit at a table while the world moves on without you. Desire whispers louder than guilt, but a mother's memory is longer than a sinner's prayer. The pressure began to mount. Melissa called me, sounding frantic. "What did you do?" "Mom is crying in the bathroom. People are ignoring her at the garden club. Even my kid's school teacher asked me if everything was all right at home because of something Aunt Leah said at church." "I didn't do anything, Melissa," I said. "I just stopped being silent. Silence was the only thing giving them power. I've just withdrawn my contribution." "But they're our parents." "No," I replied. "They're your parents." They made that very clear to my son. But I wasn't finished. The social isolation was just the appetizer. I wanted to hit them where it would hurt the most, their annual community fundraiser. This was the event of the year, a backyard BBQ for the local firefighters and the who's who of our town. My father would spend weeks prepping the grill. My mother would spend thousands on floral arrangements. It was their coronation as the kindest couple in suburbia. I knew they wouldn't invite me. They were in damage control mode, trying to pretend I was having a mental breakdown, but they didn't account for Mrs. Eileen Carlton. She was my old 4th grade teacher, a woman who had seen through my parents' facade 30 years ago. She was 80 now, sharp as a razor, and she had a massive following on the local community forums. I met her for tea. I showed her the pictures of Caleb from that morning at the diner, pale, shaking, looking like a ghost. I played her the voicemail from my father. Mrs. Carlton didn't say much at first. She just gripped her teacup until her knuckles turned white. "In my day," she said, "we knew what to call people who hurt children. We called them outcasts." The day of the fundraiser arrived. It was a beautiful Saturday. I could imagine my father in his King of the Grill apron, handing out burgers with a rehearsed smile. I could see my mother floating through the crowd, her laughter sounding like glass breaking. But then, Mrs. Carlton arrived. And she wasn't alone. She brought a small group of women from the Historical Society, women who had known my parents for 40 years. They didn't make a scene. They didn't shout. They just stayed for 5 minutes. As my mother approached them with a tray of appetizers, Mrs. Carlton looked her dead in the eye. "No thank you, Eleanor," she said, her voice carrying across the lawn. "I'd hate to take a visitor's portion. I'll go eat somewhere that understands that family isn't something you earn through obedience." The silence that followed was deafening. It was the kind of silence that spreads like ink in a glass of water. Within an hour, half the guests had remembered other appointments. The firefighters, who are the first to recognize a toxic environment, packed up their things and left early. By sunset, my parents were standing in a backyard filled with expensive meat, untouched salads, and the crushing weight of their own reputation rotting in the sun. That night, my mother sent a message. It wasn't an apology. It was a eulogy for her social life. "I hope you're happy. No one will look us in the eye. We're being treated like lepers in our own town. I made a mistake, okay? I didn't think it would spread. I didn't think people would care about one weekend." She didn't regret what she did to Caleb. She regretted that people knew, but the final blow was yet to come. Because there was one thing they loved more than their name, their house. That pristine colonial-style tomb they called a home. My father had inherited it from his father, and they treated it like a holy relic. They always said it was the legacy of the family. I sent them a package, a simple brown box. Inside were all the photos I had of them, every childhood picture, every holiday snapshot, but I had taken a pair of scissors to them. I had cropped myself out. I had cropped Caleb out. All that was left were images of Arthur and Eleanor standing alone in their big, empty house. I included a note. This is your family now, just the two of you. In your perfect house with your perfect lawn and your perfect silence. You fed your pride more than you fed my child. You called him a visitor. Well, now you're strangers to us. This house was supposed to stay in the family forever, but the family left. Now, it's just a shell. Enjoy the quiet. I never got a response to that letter. I didn't need one. A week later, Melissa called me, her voice shaking. I went over there to check on them. The house was dark. All the curtains were drawn. Dad was just sitting in the living room in his slippers, staring at the wall. Mom won't come out of her room. They're starving, sis. Not for food, for attention, for someone to tell them they're good people, and nobody is coming. Good, I said. That means they finally understand the rules of the house. Months passed. The rocky foundation of my life had been cleared away, and in its place, I built something new. Caleb started to laugh again. He started to ask for seconds at dinner without looking like he was committing a crime. He stopped trying to be invisible. One afternoon, we were driving back from a soccer game, and we happened to take a route that passed through their old neighborhood. I tried to turn off, but Caleb saw the street sign. Can we drive by the big house? He asked. I hesitated. Why, baby? I just want to see if the lights are on. We drove by. The lawn was no longer a manicured carpet. It was overgrown, weeds choking the rose bushes. The porch light was flickering, a dying heartbeat in the dusk. A single curtain moved in the upstairs window, but no one came out. The house looked haunted. It looked like a place where love had gone to die. Does anyone live there? Caleb asked, leaning his head against the window. Not really, I said. Just two people who forgot how to be human. Caleb sat back, a small peaceful smile on his face. He leaned his head on my shoulder, his breathing steady and sure. I'm not hungry anymore, Mom, he whispered. I kissed the top of his head, the scent of grass and sunshine filling my lungs. I know, baby, neither am I. The truth is a fire. It can keep you warm, or it can burn your house down. My parents chose the latter, and now they are forced to live in the ashes. If you've ever felt like a visitor in your own family, remember this. The table is only as big as the hearts of the people sitting at it. And if they won't feed you, it's time to find a new table. Would you have done the same? Or is family loyalty worth the hunger? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if this story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the shadows. We're all just trying to find our way home.